Have you ever felt like your body just has a mind of its own? When you're stressed or feelings get really strong, like you're constantly on edge maybe, or your reactions just feel, well, too much, almost out of your control. Something a lot of people experience where your internal world feels a bit like a volatile chemical reaction waiting to happen. Today, we're actually taking a fascinating journey right into the biological roots of that sensitivity. We're going to dive deep into the neuroendocrine and neurochemical factors. So essentially, the dance between our hormones and brain chemicals and how that powerfully shapes our emotional landscape. And we'll be looking at this particularly through the lens of borderline personality disorder, or BPD, which, as you might know, is a condition often characterized by intense emotional swings, maybe a shifting sense of self, and significant challenges in relationships.
Exactly. And our guide for this deep dive is the really insightful work of Dr. Valentin Redoy. He's a psychiatrist and also a psychoanalytical psychotherapist.
Ah.
He does a great job unpacking how our very biology, from our genes right through to brain chemistry and our stress response systems fundamentally influences how we perceive the world, how we experience it, and how we react to it.
Right. So our mission today isn't just to list these complex biological mechanisms. We want to understand not just what they are, but how they really contribute to those emotional and relational challenges we mentioned. Think of this deep dive as a kind of shortcut for you, our listener, to grasp these pretty profound connections, maybe uncover some genuine aha moments, and perhaps gain a new layer of empathy for just how intricate the human experience can be. So let's start unpacking this. We often talk about emotions as if they're purely mental things, right? Psychological. But the truth is, they're much more embodied. Our deepest feelings are fundamentally tangled up with chemical messengers, buzzing through our brains, and these really sophisticated stress systems built into our bodies. It's not just a thought. It's this dynamic living system, constantly working, influencing every moment.
That's precisely it. And what becomes really clear when we look at BPD is that several of these systems show, well, distinct differences. Now, it's true that scientific findings aren't always perfectly uniform across every single study. Individuals can present differently, or different studies might highlight varying aspects. But the collective picture, it describes a body that often feels perpetually on edge. It's like a system that's constantly overworked, incredibly difficult to soothe, and seems stuck in a state of high alert. That makes just getting through the day a huge challenge.
Wow, yeah, that sounds like an exhausting internal battle. So where do we even begin to understand this constant activation?
A really good place to start is with the body's central stress command center, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. You'll often hear it called the HPA axis. It's this intricate network, and it's responsible for orchestrating our whole stress response. It ends with the release of cortisol, which most people know as the stress hormone. In a, let's say, healthy system, the HPA axis helps us respond to a threat, and then importantly, it calms us back down efficiently once the danger's passed, like a well-calibrated alarm.
Okay, and what happens when that alarm system isn't working properly, particularly in BPD?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting and honestly quite complex. Studies on the HPA axis in BPD show pretty mixed results. For instance, some individuals might actually have lower baseline cortisol levels. That could suggest a kind of chronic underactivation or maybe even burnout, while others show a higher daily output, pointing to constant overactivation. But the consistent finding, the thread that runs through it all, is significant dysregulation. So instead of that flexible, adaptive response to stress, the system is just erratic. The stress alarm is either stuck in the on position, constantly signaling danger even when there isn't any, or maybe it's burned out from overuse and struggles to respond effectively when it actually is needed. Scientists have a term for this state: allostatic overload.
Allostatic overload.
Yeah, it's that critical point where the body's been pushed beyond its capacity to return to balance, to calm. It's not really coping anymore, it's just enduring.
That phrase alone, allostatic overload, paints such a vivid picture, a body under siege. And our sources give us this really resonant example with Anna's story. They describe how, for her, well, a small disagreement could leave her trembling for hours. Quote, even when the fight was over, her body still acted like danger was present. It wasn't just a lingering feeling, it was a deep, physical reaction.
Precisely. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, we often see early childhood trauma playing a pretty significant role in shaping the stress system. It's almost like those early overwhelming experiences sort of teach the body to stay on guard, to maintain that constant state of perceived threat. And this physiological programming, if you like, can explain why symptoms so common in BPD, things like impulsivity, intense emotional storms, even that cloudy thinking or dissociation, why they often flare up so dramatically under stress. The body's already primed for danger, so even minor triggers can send it spiraling.
Right. It really makes you think, what's it like to navigate the world when your own body is constantly screaming danger? Even when your logical mind knows you're safe, it must be just utterly exhausting, that internal battle, moment by moment. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about a very different chemical messenger, but one that's just as crucial for our emotional and social lives: oxytocin. It often gets called the connection hormone, right? And for good reason. It plays this vital role in trust, in bonding, creating that fundamental feeling of safety, of closeness with others. It's like the neurochemical glue holding us together.
It is. And what's particularly intriguing when we look at oxytocin in the context of BPD is that some studies suggest individuals might have lower baseline levels, or maybe even fewer functional oxytocin receptors. Now think about what that could mean for relationships. It could make closeness feel inherently fragile, something deeply desired, maybe even craved, but at the same time, incredibly hard to trust or sustain. This often shows up in that classic push-pull dynamic you sometimes see, where there's this intense yearning for intimacy, but also a struggle to tolerate it when it happens.
So it's not just about wanting connection, but maybe a fundamental biological hurdle in feeling that connection as safe or reliable. Is that it?
Exactly. The body's own system for signaling safe connection might be under-responsive. But, and this is important, there's a really hopeful side to this too. Other research shows that during effective therapy especially, approaches focused on attachment or trauma, oxytocin levels can actually rise measurably. This happens as individuals start to feel safer and more secure, often first in the therapeutic relationship itself. And this increase, it's often directly linked to significant improvements in symptoms and better emotion regulation. It's powerful evidence for how healing environments and secure attachments can make a real difference, even corrective ones.
And it's not just limited to the therapy room, is it? I think our sources mentioned some preliminary experiments using intranasal oxytocin, like a nasal spray, showing potential for helping with emotional regulation and sensitivity, particularly for people with trauma histories. That feels like a very direct link between the hormone and our ability to connect and stabilize.
It truly is, and Anna's story illustrates this internal conflict so well. The sources describe how she felt that closeness was beautiful but dangerous. Quote, when a friend hugged her warmly, she sometimes felt tears rise without knowing why. Anna, you see, that's not just a thought process. It suggests her very chemical system, the one meant to make bonding feel safe, felt unreliable. It created this confusing mix of emotions. It really reflects those often contradictory patterns from early attachments, perhaps where intimacy was mixed with unpredictability or even pain, leaving her body wired for mixed signals.
That's profound. Just thinking, how might your own ability to form deep connections be affected if your bonding chemistry felt unreliable? Constantly sending mixed signals between desire and danger. It really paints a picture of the internal struggle and, honestly, the courage it must take to keep seeking connection despite that. Okay, next up, serotonin. Probably one of the brain's most famous chemical messengers. It's an absolute powerhouse in regulating our emotions, crucial for everything from mood and anxiety to impulse control. Many people know it from antidepressants, but its role is way broader.
Serotonin is definitely central, and what's particularly interesting here is the genetic link. We know, for example, about variations in a gene called 5-HTTLPR. This gene affects how efficiently serotonin is transported in the brain, and people carrying the short version of this gene might show a more sensitive stress response, they might experience stronger emotional reactions, their nervous system is just, well, more finely tuned to what's happening around them.
And this is where it gets really interesting because it connects to something called the differential susceptibility theory.
Mm-hmm.
This theory flips the script on the old idea of genetic vulnerability. It suggests that the exact same genetic variant, like that short serotonin gene that might make someone more vulnerable in a harsh, unsupportive environment, can actually be protective and lead to better outcomes, greater thriving in supportive, nurturing environments. So it's not simply a flaw. It's a sensitivity that cuts both ways, depending entirely on the context.
This is such a critical point. It reframes how we think about sensitivity altogether. Our sources use a great analogy for this. They say, think of it this way. Some nervous systems are like very thin skin. In harsh weather, they get hurt more easily. But in sunlight, they also feel warmth more deeply. and that perfectly captures it. Sensitivity, while potentially a risk factor in chaotic or negative settings, can actually become a profound gift in safety and security. It can lead to deeper experiences, richer feelings, stronger connections. It's really about a heightened capacity to experience everything, both the pain and the joy.
Anna knew this paradox deeply. The sources tell us. When her partner criticized her, she felt crushed, the pain immense. But when he reassured her, the comfort was so profound that it stayed with her for days. That clearly shows that double-edged nature of sensitivity. It's not just about negative reactions, but also a bigger capacity for positive ones, too.
Exactly. It completely challenges that notion that sensitivity is just a weakness we need to fix or overcome. Instead, it frames it as this powerful capacity that's highly dependent on the environment it finds itself in. For someone like Anna, understanding this could be genuinely transformative. Realizing her depth of feeling isn't some defect, but actually a potential for profound connection if she's met with safety and understanding.
That's such a powerful reframing for anyone listening, isn't it? That what feels like a vulnerability might actually be a kind of superpower in the right conditions. Okay, let's move on to dopamine, the reward chemical, as it's often called. It's tied to motivation, pleasure, that essential drive to act and pursue goals. It fuels our desires, helps us learn what feels good.
Indeed. And in BPD, some studies point towards noticeable differences in genes that influence dopamine pathways and also in general dopamine activity levels. Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture, well, low or irregular dopamine signaling can make it much harder to feel that steady, sustained satisfaction or pleasure from everyday things. This can then lead to this powerful, almost desperate drive for strong, immediate stimulation, quick relief. Whether that comes through intense, maybe volatile relationships or risky behaviors or even substances, the body is constantly seeking something to fill that internal void, to get that surge of feeling that others might experience more easily or regularly.
So it's not necessarily that someone doesn't want pleasure, but maybe they have difficulty achieving stable, fulfilling pleasure. And that leads to hunting for something more intense just to feel
Yeah.
something.
Precisely. It's like the system needs a much bigger jolt just to register, just to feel anything substantial. And Anna's description really brings this home. She sometimes described life as gray unless something dramatic happened. Quote, a fight, a sudden decision, or even self-harm could momentarily break through the emptiness, providing a brief, albeit destructive, surge of feeling.
That's incredibly insightful. It sheds so much light on why some people might seek out intense, even dangerous experiences. It's not just a choice, maybe, but a desperate biological push to find relief from an internal grayness to feel alive. Okay, let's explore one of the most complex systems and one that's often misunderstood. The body's own pain-killing systems, our natural opioid systems. We're talking about things like opioid receptors, MORs, and copioid receptors, or KRs. These are incredibly important. They regulate pain, sure, but also reward and that intrinsic sense of emotional comfort and well-being.
What's truly fascinating here is the proposed imbalance in BPD. Some evidence suggests individuals might have lower MOR function, which essentially makes it harder to experience those natural feelings of reward, comfort, positive feelings. And at the same time, there's evidence pointing to higher KOR activity. This can dramatically intensify feelings of distress, dysphoria, that deep emotional pain. So this imbalance creates a sort of double whammy. Positive feelings are harder to hang on to, and emotional pain feels much more intense, more overwhelming, almost unbearable.
Wow. So the body's natural comfort system isn't just struggling, it might be actively amplifying distress. That's a tough reality.
It absolutely is. And this leads us to a fascinating, though difficult, hypothesis some researchers have put forward. They suggest that self-harm, in some cases, might function as a desperate, though obviously maladaptive, way to stimulate this very opioid system. It's almost as if the physical pain triggers a release of the body's own natural opioids, temporarily replacing that unbearable emotional pain with a physical sensation the body can, in a way, treat. It's a profound, if tragic, form of attempted self-regulation, trying to regain some control over internal pain that feels completely out of control. But we have to be clear, treatments that directly block opioid receptors to target self-injury are still in very early, very uncertain stages. This is an area needing much more research and clinical sensitivity.
It's such a powerful and complex thought, though, isn't it? How the body, pushed to its absolute limit, might instinctively try to manage unbearable pain in any way it can. It really underscores the depth of the internal struggle, and maybe the biological roots of behaviors that can seem so baffling from the outside. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground today, looking at these intricate systems one by one. Now let's try to bring these threads together, synthesize them, paint a more complete picture of how our biology really shapes our emotional world. The key takeaways from this deep dive seems stark, but also, I think, deeply insightful. First, that stress system, the HPA axis, often overworked, unsteady, creates a constant internal alarm. Second, oxytocin signaling so crucial for bonding for safety might be lower, making closeness feel fragile, hard to trust.
Right.
Third, those differences in serotonin pathways can amplify sensitivity. Makes it a vulnerability in tough times, but potentially a powerful gift in safety. Fourth, dopamine pathways might leave people prone to that grayness, their emptiness, or seeking intense, sometimes risky stimulation just to feel alive. And finally, the body's own opioid system might underdeliver natural comfort, leaving emotional pain incredibly hard to soothe, hard to endure.
It's a lot to take in, isn't it? But here's the really crucial message, and it's something Dr. Radoy emphasizes strongly. None of this means destiny. Biology absolutely sets the stage. It provides predispositions, a particular neurological wiring perhaps, but it is not a fixed fate. Experience, relationships, and especially effective therapy can profoundly reshape that script. It's not just about learning to cope, it's about genuine transformation. In fact, many of these very systems we've talked about, particularly oxytocin, cortisol, they've actually been shown to shift, measurably, positively, over the course of effective treatment, which demonstrates the immense capacity for change and healing that's inherent in the human system.
That's incredibly hopeful. It really suggests that even with these powerful biological influences, there's significant room for growth, for change. And Anna's story, which kind of guided us today, offers such a powerful conclusion here. The sources tell us that therapy slowly helped her recognize that these weren't personal flaws. They were signs of a nervous system tuned too tightly by both biology and early life. Quote, with time, she began to discover ways to soften that tuning, learning that sensitivity could also carry depth, empathy, and intensity of connection when met with safety.
And that, you see, that truly highlights the immense power of a supportive environment, of targeted intervention, how it can transform what might initially seem like just a vulnerability into a profound strength. It becomes about learning to understand and then maybe gently retune that complex biological symphony inside us, allowing for a richer, more integrated way of experiencing life.
So we've taken quite a deep dive today into how these intricate neurochemical and neuroendocrine systems profoundly influence our emotional lives, offering hopefully a crucial biological lens to understand complex challenges like borderline personality disorder.
And what we've learned, I think, really underscores a vital truth. While biology certainly sets the stage, gives us a sort of blueprint of our predispositions, it is not our ultimate fate. Understanding these internal systems, it opens up immense possibilities for targeted support, for profound healing, and for real personal growth. It allows us to work with our biology, not just feel ruled by it.
So here's a thought maybe for you to carry forward, our listener. How might a deeper understanding of your own biological sensitivities, or maybe the sensitivities of people around you, how might that change the way you approach empathy, support, connection in your everyday life? Could looking through this biological lens unlock a new kind of compassion, perhaps? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world where biology meets emotion. We hope you walk away feeling a little more informed and maybe, just maybe, a lot more empathetic.